I've got with me today one of the newer members of Parliament. Agnes has been with us about 15 months. Now, your surname, Lohini, a couple of different pronunciations. Can you tell us how that comes about?
Well, actually, Lohini or Lohini are both actually correct. My parents are from Samoa, my father's from Samoa, but my dad's grandfather is actually from China. And so, Samoa has that history of Chinese coming in as indentured labour. Mm-hmm. And so my great-grandfather's surname was Lo Hen, and often Chinese it's Hen Lo. But as happens sometimes with records as people register names, and it's happened, in other countries, but also in Samoa, is sometimes there are changes to names. And so at some stage, there was an I added. And so Lo Hen became Lohini. And so actually, if you're of Chinese descent and you're speaking the language, it would be Lo. But because of the Samoan vowels, it would be Lo. So Lohini or Lohini.
And that's really interesting. And the reason, of course, that you're here with me today is that it's Samoan Language Week.
Yep.
And one of the things you're going to do is to get me to do a reasonable but simple greeting in Samoan.
Okay. One that's a very, very nice one, and it's often used, is, and I'll split it up, is Malo le soifua, maua I le langi mama.
Well, that's really long. Let's do it half the time.
We'll just do the first bit. Yeah. Malo le soifua.
Malo le soifua.
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 As in soy milk.
Yep.
Soifua.
Soifua.
Yep. And often that is a very nice greeting just to have by itself, yep, alongside talofa lava.
Mm-hmm. Talofa lava. That's the old one.
And so, but if you want to, in a sort of very nice formal setting, Malo le soifua maua I le langi mama. It is very nice. It's sort of saying, good day to you and good health to you.
That's really good. Yeah. Okay. We better, seeing we're here for the day, yeah, we better talk a little bit about the questions. Today's an unusual day at Parliament in that we're sitting under urgency, and we're just going to break out of urgency for an hour or so at 2:00 in order to do questions and then go back into, I think what's being described as catch-up mode. We're trying to catch up some stuff that got left behind while Parliament wasn't sitting during the lockdown. The first question is from Nikki Kay to the Prime Minister. What Prime Minister? What would that be in Samoan?
Palamia.
So it's sort of like a transliteration of Premier.
Yeah, or Parliament.
Yeah.
So Palamia.
Does she agree with the Right Honourable Winston Peters that New Zealanders have been in lockdown for far too long and a bit more? Now, the really interesting thing about this is that it's going to be Winston Peters who's going to be answering the question. So he's going to have to pretend that he's Jacinda Ardern talking about himself, yes, which often leads to...
Which I still struggle with, that whole... when someone else is here.
It is a struggle, but when you're meant to, when you're answering on behalf of someone else, actually speak in their voice and speak in their gender as well, which makes it quite hard on occasions. Anyway, second question, Jamie Lee Ross to the Minister of Health, and it's about use of vaccines, the development of use of vaccines. So what health, is that, you're the Deputy Prime Minister in Samoa is the Minister of Health, I think.
I believe she has that.
Yeah.
We talk about... soifua maluluina. Mm-hmm. It's just that sort of whole holistic health, well-being.
Mm. Right. Then I better keep moving. Minister of Education from Maia Lubeck. What action is the government taking to invest in training and education for people who've lost their jobs? Paul Goldsmith to the Minister of Finance. What priority does he give to further opening up the economy? Judith Collins to the Minister of Economic Development. About the pipeline of infrastructure projects. Ron Mark to the Prime Minister about infrastructure and capabilities. Again, it's going to be Winston Peters who answers that one. Louise Upston about the Keep New Zealand Working Package, Chris Bishop about light rail in Auckland, Joe Luxton to the Minister of Revenue about the Small Business Cash Flow Loan Scheme. Nicola Willis has got a question to the Minister of Housing about Kiwi Build. What would we say? Sort of whale, is that the word for house in
Yes,
Samoa?
whale.
And so it'll be Minister of Whale or be Minister of...
Minister of whale.
Yeah. And Shane Recce to the Minister of Employment about measures to measure the progress of his programs. And Paul Eagle to the Minister of Building and Construction about construction businesses and supporting them. So when you're saying goodbye to someone or you're signing off, talofa?
Tō whā soifua.
Toi whā soifua. Soifua?
Soifua. Goodbye and go well.
Right. Oh, that sounds really good. And right at the end, I'm told when you get very familiar with people, you just say whā.
Whā.
Yeah, yes. That's right. And I won't use the old joke around that Mr. Longy used to use about Mr. Goff.
Okay.